So, do people really think that what's going on with Trump's accusations of election fraud, or just that Trump is just this big narcissist that can't handle losing, and he's just making all of this up because he just can't accept losing, and he's just this crazy man that just completely fabricated everything about election fraud? I mean, is that really what you think's going on? And he got all these people to go along with it. You know, you got Rudy Giuliani, his whole family, all these lawyers. You got these people to sign affidavits. You know, just, is that what you really think going on? That he's just making all of this up. There's just absolutely nothing to this whatsoever. And he got all these people to go along with him, and he just keeps spouting this off because he's just this big orange narcissist. I mean, really, though? Look, I'm not saying I know what's going on, but there's a bigger picture involved. Trump is not working in isolation. I mean, this whole notion that he's just some crazy, conceited man that just decided to run for president to inflate his own ego, and that he's just, that's all Trump cares about is working for Trump, and he's just this man working for Trump, and that's all he really cares about. I mean, I don't think that's a very sophisticated analysis of our whole scope of politics. I mean, I just really don't. I mean, you have to understand that there's a bigger picture going on here. Look at all the corruption that's gone on in the world throughout our history. I mean, there's clearly a bigger plot for power and control. And this isn't something new coming along with Trump. So maybe Trump is working for some bigger plot of power and control, but it's not all him. Maybe there's something else that's a bigger faction that wants to take control over humanity, and it's happening ultimately on some higher dimensional scale for, I would say, it's some sort of beings that want to have control over like the collective consciousness of humanity in some higher dimensional scale. Okay, now that's a little bit out there, but still, you can understand that whatever, I mean, it's not just him being some narcissist, crazy man that's just making everything up, and he's just doing all this for his own self-interest. I mean, and, you know, all these corruption and politics throughout history are these kings and queens and rulers that are just doing this all for their own self-interest. There's a bigger picture going on here of something that really wants to have control over humanity, some sort of like metaphysical scale. You know, how we like create, we're like cells to some sort of higher being. Something wants to have control over that. Some basic idea here. And so, when it comes to what's going on with Trump, I would say he's either working for some overall plot that wants to dominate and control humanity for that means. And this is all a charade then. That this is all part of a charade to divide us and keep us arguing over this election. And is there election fraud? Is there not? You know, it's all just made up. And he's like an actor in a bigger game making all this up. Or there really was election fraud because Trump is actually working against who's ever trying to organize together to take control over the world in this whole new world order plot. And they need the office of the presidency to get into that position to create more control over the world and to, you know, get into that position of for their new world order world domination plot, which I think with the same people that have been manipulating, well, same beings, whatever they are, they've been trying to manipulate us this whole time, keep us in these lower levels of consciousness, lied to us about philosophy, lied to us about basic paradigms in science, which is philosophy, lied to us about extraterrestrials, lied to us about our history, all that stuff. Have poisoned our water, poisoned our food. You know, there's a lot going on. All right, so what I'm saying is, either Trump is working for them, and this is all a charade, and, you know, it's not just Trump working, you know, by himself, and he's just this narcissist that really just can't handle losing. I'm a big baby. No, it's either all a plot that's a charade made up, and that's all just trying to divide people, a sophisticated manipulation, something bigger on a grander scale working to manipulate us, and that's why there's all this going on. Or he's actually working against them, and that's why they had to rig this election because they really don't want him in office because they need to take control of the presidency to work and further this plot. So everything comes back to whether or not there is this plot. And I think there definitely is. There's not just Trump working in isolation here. I mean, that's just a ridiculous premise. That's not getting it at all. That's not seeing the big picture on what's going on with humanity overall and why we're being lied to about the aliens, why we're being lied to about the philosophy and our history and everything. You got to understand, I mean, is it either Trump working for them and is he working against them? So maybe this election fraud was real. I mean, and maybe the TVs are the ones lying. Because the media, the mainstream media companies have been infiltrated by whatever this plot is that wants to have control over humanity and is doing this. And so they're, the big tech companies too are all working together and they try to facilitate this election steal. And that's why they continue and perpetuate. There's no evidence of election fraud, even though there clearly is. So, I mean, I would say there's certainly evidence of suspicious activity, whether or not that's evidence of systematic fraud on behalf of this deep state to steal the election because more people actually did vote for Trump. I can't tell you that with certainty, but I'd say there's certainly evidence of suspicious activity with everything going on and certain glitches that switch votes from Trump to Biden and certain other factors with this mail-in voting and COVID. And so, I mean, we have to look at the big picture here. The idea that Trump's working in isolation and he's just this big narcissist that's just only doing this to feed his ego is just a ridiculous premise. I don't think that's what's going on here at all. And we really need to just analyze this in terms of the bigger picture and try to see, is there some sort of overall plot of manipulation and control over humanity, and how does that play in? Is Trump working for this or is he not working against it? And if he's working against it, well, I don't think we should take the side that against him because, look, we don't want to be manipulated and controlled. I mean, I certainly don't. I don't see why you would, unless you're manipulated and controlled to think that's okay. So I don't think we need this at all, and we need to break away from this, and we need to realize that maybe there really was election fraud. Maybe, the TVs are the ones lying. Maybe it's the big tech companies that are lying, and they were, kind of in on it to some extent. I'm not saying everyone involved in the media and big tech companies is in on it, but at some extent there is a controlled, sophisticated effort by these companies to insist that there was no election fraud and not give an honest and objective take on the issue, which they clearly do not seem to be doing. And so, I think we really just got to consider this. And the idea that Trump's working in isolation and it's some big narcissist trying to feed his ego is just this ridiculous premise, and it's really not getting the full scope of the whole big picture here, guys. It's just really not. It's not a sophisticated understanding of what's really going on here, and it's just, you're just wallowing in your ignorance. And it's just, you got to open up your mind a little bit here and try to see the bigger picture. I got plenty of videos on it. Check it out, man.